Welcome to Expedient Means with Lin Wei on Time Monk Radio. Lin currently resides in China and is the founder and head teacher of Guizhen Philocultural Society. He has extensive experience in Buddhist and Taoist meditation, Qigong, martial arts, and traditional Chinese medicine. To learn more about Lin, please visit his website at www.guizhenhui.net. Tonight, Lin will be continuing his commentary on the Tao Te Ching, chapters 31 through 40. So welcome back, Lin.
Hello, hello.
So we're going to carry on with the commentary on the Tao Te Ching.
Sounds good. We can do some other type of text if you want, but yeah, let's continue with the other one.
You don't want to do the commentary on Alice in Wonderland or anything?
Oh, the Jabberwocky, definitely. We can do that. Great. So, well, just to let everyone know that the commentary that we're doing is very much an unorthodox commentary, only because it's not talking in the usual sense of how a Tao Te Ching is commented on. It's not following a more common outline of, commentary. It's the best way I could say it. So, I guess we shall begin. Oolong?
Okay, you want me to read it?
Sir,
Right.
yes, sir.
A strong military, a tool of misfortune. All things detest it. Therefore, those who possess the Tao avoid it. Honorable gentlemen will at home value the left. When deploying the military, value the right. The military is a tool of misfortune, not the tool of honorable gentlemen. When using out of necessity, calm detachment should be above all, victorious but without glory. Those who glorify and are delighting in the killing. Those who delight in the killing cannot achieve their ambitions upon the world. Auspicious events favor the left. Inauspicious events favor the right. The lieutenant general is positioned to the left. The major general is positioned to the right. We say that they are treated as if in a funeral. Those who have been killed should be mourned with sadness. Victory in war should be treated as a funeral.
Most people would read this and say, oh, it's pretty much straight to the point, could take it at face value.
I was going to say it
can be
sounded like America's foreign policy there for a minute.
We killed everyone. Yay! We won the war. Everyone's dead. Oh, no. Well, we can look at the first section, which reads from the first part, a strong military, all up to cannot achieve their ambitions upon the world. We can read that as a first section, right? Or just as a section. And we can look at it in two ways. One is, face value for actual military use. And then the other could be as like an investigation for the mind, investigation of the mind. So for here, military, let's see that it means that one must not rely on brute force for the development and or success of their wishes. A strong approach is like a road to eventual defeat. Anyone who understands this does not favor war or conflict, but remains still and peaceful as if they were home, like feeling that sense of compassion, sense of peace, sense of there's nothing else, there's nothing wrong, When in engagement of conflict, strength with wisdom is needed, not to fall victim to ego and gain, but to stop the conflict without much harm. Of course, there's going to be harm, but just don't be proud of it. I got them. I killed 40. Yeah, I killed 50. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. And then people I killed more than you, and then I'm better, and they revel in murder. So here they talk about the right and the left, right? Here, the right is like a strength. The left is a compassion. Let's just say it that way. Thus causing harm on the right. In war, the result would be, when it is over, not to jump for joy, happy, that it is over because it is partying over those who died, on both sides. Everyone's like, well, I'm happy, we won the war, yay, but their own soldiers died, and maybe some civilians, and then the other side is like, well, their people died too. So no one really wins a war because everyone's killing each other, even though there's going to be those who survived, and the ones who survived perhaps are the ones, quote unquote, in the victory seat, meaning they gain control. But then they just created negative karma for killing. Well, that's not fun. Now what happens is it's going to happen again and again and again. Let's look at this part on the investigation of the mind, though, because it doesn't really say that. But we can take it that way. Go a little further now. Investigation of the mind in this section would say that that the military would be false thinking. What are all the things that detest it? More false thinking about having false thinking and then being unhappy that there is false thinking. Try to say that 5 times fast. Those that possess the Tao here mean that those who are cultivated in virtue and mind. So when it says the honorable men stay at home, value the left, it means that those with virtue and cultivation are at home in their original mind, and they're purified in what people call mind, body, and spirit. Yet it is all one and the same thing, truthfully. They cultivate the young body, purifying as high as they can go when they go to investigate the mind, which is, just say like deploying the military. Investigating the mind. You get investigate the mind holding on a single thought. So they go with one thought, one fire to put out another fire. They go deep into concentration without attaching to a single state. No thought attachment. It's as though there is nothing. Hence valuing the right, yin. The aspect of investigating is yang, but the stillness is relatively seen as yin. So you have metaphors, those metaphors. The next part, from auspicious events favor the left all the way to victory and war should be treated as a funeral. If in terms of cultivation, we can look at this whole entire paragraph from the first 4 sentences. Mean nothing. It's a reference to a cultural dealing with military. Now, the last several sentences point to etiquette, how one should control their mind and views when facing the act of fighting, war, blah, 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 etc. Anything you can put in there that just has some type of a violence, has some type of a hardcore adversity, something to that effect. We have to look culturally, though. If we can have the characters of this section and investigate or research how they were used contextually, what was going on at the time this was written, what events were taking place, what was society like, behavioralisms like, then we can understand what kind of context he's saying with the first sections of the first 4 sentences when he's talking here. Auspicious events favor the left, and so inauspicious events favor the right. There is cultural context there. So it would be good for the listener or the person reading the Tao Te Ching or whatnot to go out and try to investigate what are these things meaning for the sense of cultural, because then it puts people in a specific state of mind for application of that kind of viewpoint. So it may not be something very, very in depth, very profound, extremely deep meaning, but culturally, yes. That's just my 2 cents on the 31 chapter.
Yeah, my sense of this one is the easiest way to read it is certainly the superficial way. And again, I see a lot of this in terms of the United States foreign policy. And I for whatever reason, I keep picturing Hillary Clinton talking about, I don't know if it was Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi, where she's like, we came, we saw, we killed them, and she's got a big grin, and she's all happy, and it just, it's revolting.
Wow, that's just craziness.
Yeah,
I mean,
so,
the way you can see how government is influential on the people when the people hold the same views. I mean, literally the same views of and behaviorisms of those in government. Now, they may not be able to apply it as strongly as those in government, but on the societal level, they'll have their specific levels of application. Those things have only a certain capacity that can be utilized. On the government level, it can be utilized at high-level capacities of basically overpowering anything. The governments usually can't overpower their own people, because they have all the money and all the power, all the weapons and whatever, the means to put out their propaganda. People in society really don't. They have to pay for it themselves, and they really don't have that much money to do so. But when you see society and people in society doing specific things that just for some reason throw up this bubble with the picture of people in government, you're sitting there going, oh my God, how this mindset just is like a plague.
yeah, I mean, it's scary to think that that's a macrocosm and there's a microcosm. Hopefully society in general doesn't act like that, but
yeah, there's people like that.
Yeah, oh, for sure, yeah.
So
All right, well, let's carry on. Or did you want to?
Carry on.
Okay.
Carry on, my good man. Carry on.
All right, chapter 32. The Tao, eternally nameless, its simplicity, although imperceptible, cannot be treated by the world as subservient. If the sovereign can hold on to it, all will follow by themselves. Heaven and earth together in harmony will rain sweet dew. People will not need to force it, it will adjust by itself. In the beginning, there were names. Names came to exist everywhere. One should know when to stop, knowing when to stop, thus avoiding danger. The existence of the Tao in the world is like the streams in the valley into rivers into the ocean. I'm guessing there's a bit of an esoteric meaning behind this one.
Maybe. Maybe. Let's see. Perhaps I would say so, perhaps I wouldn't. Well, let's say this whole passage speaks on attachment and views. Do not hold on to views of superiority, for they only cause problems. Yet it speaks on the manner of higher wisdom and, being sovereign. But what is sovereign? One's inherent wisdom is sovereign. If one's wisdom is undefiled, it is though it's in all directions. I mean, there's no directions, there's no discrimination at this point. We say the 10 directions. In truth, if you're just going from what the direction you see in, wherever your eyes are pointing, you're saying, I'm seeing. Well, that's not you seeing. We want to find out what actually sees, then we can realize that, there is no real direction. What actually hears, what actually smells, what actually has function within these organs of sense. That's what we have to look at. So here, thus heaven and earth are in harmony, for there are no discriminations being made, no false thinking. Speaking where names are concerned. This is to distinguish, discriminate, right? So this leads right to the false thinking mind. So the last parts of this piece speak on not thinking too much, but letting the natural way of things permeate. The existence of the Tao in the world is subtle, right? It's not too grand, but it's overall nourish. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say my interpretation of this would be that it's sort of an alchemical illusion about holding your Jing and then, the energy rising up to the brain and then the dew flowing down the skull onto the tongue and everything.
Fun stuff. Sure.
Anyway, I didn't mean to derail your train of thought, but
I don't know. I gotta try to catch what was I saying, and then what did you say before that, and then I can probably figure out what I was going to say next. Let's see. Something about the Tao in the world being subtle. Something about that. It's not very flamboyant. Something to that effect. I'm trying to remember. Okay. Something about it. This is what I'm getting, remembering now, what I was going to say. That it nourishes everything in this world. So streams and metaphors are used. Streams and rivers are used like metaphors to get this point across. But what you're saying, yes. The reason I don't want to go into the commentary of it being used as a cultivation method, or in the sense of, cultivating Jing Qi Shen and whatnot, is because there's a lot of that out there already. And even if I do it, and let's say that there is some merit to what I'm saying in it, it's still going to fall within the ocean of tons of Tao Te Ching commentaries that talk about this as a cultivation method and talk about this as another method. So I kind of tend to stay away from that. Also, it can promote a lot of more false thinking if the person really isn't sure what that means, Jing, Qi, and Shen. They don't know. If they're not too positive or sure about it, it can create more false thinking. So in this sense, I'll just talk about it in a manner of cultivation for the mind, for letting the person recognize their own false thinking mind, their own attachments and things to that nature, so they can recognize the obstacles in their life and learn how to change them, change their destiny.
Yeah, again, there's so many, the Tao Te Ching can be read on so many levels. It's just fascinating.
Yes. Okay, shall we move on to 33?
Yep, indeedy. Okay. Those who understand others are intelligent. Those who understand themselves are enlightened. Those who overcome others have strength. Those who overcome themselves are powerful. Those who know contentment are wealthy. Those who proceed vigorously have willpower. Those who do not lose their base endure. those who die but do not perish have longevity.
What do you think about this one?
You want me to give a commentary?
Yeah, man. What do you think?
Well, you go first now. I'll give mine.
Like you, Eric. Then you. Okay. Let's see. Well, let's say this passage, speaks on like a relative manner of knowing and truly knowing. To contemplate how other people are requires to know the worldly wisdom. You know the worldly wisdom, and you know how people can be. You know how people are, and the various mannerisms and culture they have as a lifestyle. That's worldly. That's smart. Yet truly having wisdom, worldly and all-pervasive wisdom, that's enlightenment. And this means one, quote unquote, knows that which moves the mind, that and the causes of that which is planted in the mind that moves the mind. You got to plant the seed in there first in order for there to be some type of thing. There's a cause, then an outcome. So he or she isn't taken by the mind, the senses, etc. Contentment here means knowing when enough is enough, yet having willpower to go for more may mean one is greedy. Yet if their views are proper and not for their own sake, then their actions are not in conflict with moral behavior towards others. Then this kind of willpower is a positively enhancing. The sentence, just looking at this, the sentence speaking of not losing their quote-unquote base means to not lose their concentration, not to be moved by false thinking, senses, etc., etc., etc.
I was thinking along the lines of Ching, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I guess again, my interpretation would have been more alchemical, right? Don't lose your sexual essence, and then
don't lose your sexual essence. Yes. Don't lose. Mm-hmm.
You would achieve longevity.
Yes. I was just telling my student this. He came over from Shanghai this weekend. He stayed Friday, Saturday, left late this afternoon, and we the whole 2 days is just discussing on cultivation, and what we do with our energies and all that fun stuff. And it came up again, like this is a constant situation for a lot of people, and he's a young kid and he's really getting into it. So he's like, what about retention? What the hell, it's really tough. And I said, of course it is, but you need that. You need to stop. Because before you were doing anything sexually, you weren't doing anything sexually. So that state of applying the mind to not having sex as something you are focusing on, that's the state you want to go back to. We put so much association to sex, gratification, anything sexual, and anything usually sexual is in some countries' societies is basically accepted as being superior, or as being something of just being in a superior position. People will see that first, go for that first, than they would a book, or they would in probably not acting out in a certain way. They rather see, ooh, who's having sex with who? Ooh, this person. What kind of clothes was she wearing? Oh my God, look at this woman at the MTV Awards dancing herself all over the place. I mean, they look at that first, and that's what's in their mind because they planted the seed and associated to it.
It's almost like a river that your mind can get stuck in and just get swept away.
And it's enjoyable. People think it's enjoyable. They create notions that it's okay to be enjoying it. And then it's accepted, and they think it's right, and that's it. The last sentence here talks about those who die but do not perish, means that they are not stuck on the cycle of rebirth, right? They're freed from it. This is longevity in terms of no life, no death. So it's thus. And what you're saying with Ching, yes, if you don't waste your Ching, your life you will live longer. Why? Because you drain your organs of their energy when you let go of yourself in that sense. And for women, you lose yin energy. So don't think, oh, well, women can have all the orgasms they want because, it's not men. They're not losing Ching. They're losing essence anyway. They're losing essence when they get all excited and Go saturated down there, and when you and when the men let go, they lose their essence too. That tired feeling. I said it before. Another thing, the tired feeling is losing energy. That's not a, I'm so relaxed now, I have no stress. No, you lost energy. Silly. It's not the
And
energy you had from the day. It's energy in your body. You've gotten tired. Your organs are exhausted.
again, they even, some languages like French, they call it le petit mort, which is the little death,
It's
right?
little death. Yeah.
So that
Oh
pretty
wow.
much says it all.
Yeah, and anyone wants to argue retention, I would say I wish, I really pray and wish that anyone can just go back in time and ask any of these Taoist monks and Buddhist monks in China, in India, wherever they want to be, and ask them if they masturbate. They will be looked at like they have the biggest thing on their forehead. They will be looked at. Just go, what are you talking about? I mean, how do you even say that word? That's so embarrassing. It's like that doesn't even happen. I mean, what does that mean? And then they go and show them like, no, we don't do that. you know, it's not part of that culture. But because it's part of culture in different countries, people think it's right and it's okay. And doctors say it's fine, then I should do it. Jeez, let's move on before we
Yeah,
make
yeah.
number 33 a whole entire hour.
All right, chapter 34. The great Tao is like a flood. It can flow to the left or to the right. The myriad things depend on it for life, but it never stops. It achieves its work, but does not take credit. It clothes and feeds myriad things, but does not rule over them. Ever desiring nothing, it can be named insignificant. Myriad things return to it, but it does not rule over them. It can be named great. Even in the end, it does not regard itself as great. That is how it can achieve its greatness.
And that's just great. We should just add, point. That's just great. Excuse me. So, the ever nourishing due to the relative state of lack. The ever giving due to the relative state of needing. This is speaking of right conduct, right views, right concentration. Keeping concentration, one does not move their mind and be taken by influences. So, thus, they're in a state of non-separation of living beings. It's interesting. The non-separation of living beings means that all living beings are the same or all together. That there is nothing living. That there is nothing non-living. I was talking to my student about this. I think it was last night. Late into the late evening, we were out in my front yard discussing this, and it's that we speak in Chan, we speak in cultivation, that all things are one, and then there's a one and the zero. But I'm not going to go into emptiness and all this other stuff like that. Just as speaking of all things are together, means we think we have a self, we feel like we have a self. The whole idea of a self seems to feel right and be right. This personality, this ego, this thing, because we see through these eyes. We're like, I see, I feel, and this and that, and we associate because that's just the mannerism in which we're using, or the tools in which we're doing. We associate with the tools. But when you go to use a hammer and hit it against the wall, you don't associate with the hammer. I am the hammer. I'm banging my head into this nail. You're not your hammer. The tools you're using. You're not your clothes. You're not your body. And the things that you assume you are doing are not you. If you attach to the things you do, then you become what you do. If you identify to it, then you are what you do. If you don't identify with it, then they're just things that you do. The moment you put a mask on it, that's it. So we're talking about non-separation of living beings. It's just that we're all connected. Whether or not it's that I think differently than another person, they behave differently than I do, that's irrelevant. That's like leaves on a tree. They fall down. They fall. They crumble and dry up and turn to dust eventually. The tree is still growing. All these trees have slightly different shapes. Some are a little bit thicker, some are a little bit wider than others, some are a little bit greener than others. But they're still leaves of this tree, or of a tree. Same thing with humans. Just people haven't found their origin just yet. And they think it's physical origin. But it's that which the physical comes from. So, go on a little bit more. Let's see. So we're talking about non-separation of living beings, right?
What about the line, the myriad things return to it, but it does not rule over them?
Okay, I can go right to the direct sentence. Myriad things return to it, but it does not rule over them. Glad you say this. You bring that up too. Everything, we'll say everything out here is quote unquote residing in the original nature, in emptiness. Let's say. I'm not saying emptiness is the original nature. I'm just giving some ideas here, but all things reside in this emptiness, and this emptiness beholds all things. The only way you can see that there is some empty space is because you have a thing in it. And the only way you can see that there is a thing in it is that this thing is surrounded by some empty space. So, this space that these things are in does not impose itself on it, does not control it. There's no such thing as a control. So you see, the original nature, the original state of all things is that there is no intent to have any type of intent for anything.
That's heavy, dude. Far out.
And someone's going to turn around and go, well, if I kill someone, that's okay, right? Because I wasn't really killing them. No, because that if the person turns around and says, please, I am done. And if it was that they were going to be killed, they would just be able to leave on their own. But they can't do that. So it makes me laugh when people turn around and say, well, this animal wanted to be killed, so I used my energy to blast him. I used my energy to send his spirit out and be free and liberated. You didn't do that. If the animal really wanted to be killed, he would walk right up to the person, or whoever has this ability to do it, which is not true. Walk right up to the person, look at him, and be like, kill me. I'm ready to go. It would be doing something that signifies it wants death right then and there. And if it was that consciously aware, it would just leave. But the animal's wisdom isn't complete. The spirit that's in this, we'll call it this way, that which we'll consider to be a soul or a spirit, that is a living being's spirit or whatnot, it is not complete in wisdom in an animal's body. That is only partial of the spirit that is scattered in other types of manifestations. When it becomes together again, then it may have the conditions to be reborn as a human. So, anywho, if there was going to be some type of oversay, then it wouldn't be called the Tao. It wouldn't be our original nature. That means there's no self. There is nothing that says, I am the one doing such and such thing for you. This was a misinterpretation of there being some overlord or this overseeing God saying, I want this person to die today. I want that person to die today. I want this animal to die today. I want that animal to die today. It doesn't work that way. You know? People are like, well, I can't explain it, so it must be by God's hands. So even like murder and death and mayhem is by God's hands. Why would anyone want to believe in that God? So it may not be the God that they think they're imagining, or that think that they're worshiping, or that they're following. It could be some other God's mannerism, but they don't have the concept or the wisdom or the awareness to realize the difference. You know? Because if the grand old God has the whole hand in how things are going to work on here, then either everyone's dying and there's wars and famine and all these psychotic people on here. If that's the way it is, then why is anyone complaining? Because that's just the way God wants it. Stop complaining. Stop fighting over whose religion is right. Who cares then? Because if it's just God saying, I want this person to shoot that guy, there should be no police officers to chase after the one doing the shooting. That's God's will. But if it's not that way, right, but if it's not that way, then that means there is another, I'm using this specific idea, you know, that then that there is another grand old being who has just as much, if not equal power to make people do whatever the hell they want to do. And that's just the way it is out there, which is not the actual way it is. Who says I know what the actual way it is, but I have not seen it to be that way, and a lot of people don't see it to be that way either, especially those who probably can see. And I don't know if I can see, but you know, you get a little feeling here and there, and it translates to you as there's a lot more to it than just, you know, this is how God wants this to happen and the devil wants that to happen. And there's a lot more going on. It's people's own causes and conditions, people's own will that makes them have problems. So there is not this thing, back to the myriad things returned to, but it is not, but it does not rule over them. It just goes that there is no separation, there is no self. Therefore, there truly is nothing that is imposing or opposing or, saying an I. There is no grand old I. So the myriad things that return to it, it's not that they return to it, it's that they were always there. The
Okay.
original. Okay.
Let's carry on to 35.
Carry on. I had a cup of coffee and
Oh, and I guess you're in the
coffee
office
is
again today because we can hear some little bit of background noise.
yeah. I have some guests coming in, some students in and out. But the coffee is putting me in a super fast mode.
All right. So chapter 35. Hold the great image. All under heaven will come. They come without harm in harmonious peace. Music and food, passing travelers stop. The Tao that is spoken out of the mouth is bland and without flavor. Look at it, cannot be seen. Listen to it, cannot be heard. Use it, it cannot be exhausted.
I really like that. I really like this one.
Good one.
That's really cool. Let's see. The great image here isn't truly an image, but when contemplated, the mind perceives it. Thus, it is like an image. It's like it is a realization of all living beings, all things itself on the tip of one strand of hair. It's just like truly knowing compassion, non-separation. Thus, all living beings to come together without discrimination. Talks about music, food, and so on. This speaks of being moved by the senses, and further states on how the false thinking mind, it goes around and around in its notions about how things are. Thus stating the spoken Tao is bland, etc., etc., etc. Just like a head talking on a head on top of a head on top of a head, just still intellectualizing things. Lastly, the last three sentences, I love them. Direct one to realize that all sounds, sight, reside within it, sprout from it, yet are not it. Thus, when using it, it is not exhausted. So it is as though there was no use of it in the first place. It is just our original way of being, our original nature.
It seems too like the more you try and pin down the Tao, the further away you get from the Tao.
It's what we call in Chan putting a head on top of a head on top of a head.
Yeah, you like to use that expression.
I love it because it's like you go outside and you meet people and it's like you see like 15 heads on each other, on people's heads. It's metaphorically speaking, is that they have a lot going on in their mind, a lot of intellectualism or a lot of notions about the world. And in cultivation, you really need to chop these things out. You don't need to have notions about how the world is. We don't need to be like people look at me and say, I am this, I know things, I'm great, I'm special because I know. No, we don't need that. That is not the right way. You don't want people to praise you. Praise opens the doors for so many problems. The last thing you need is people to praise you. The arhat, usually, we have the saying, the arhat, doesn't stay at one tree for more than, like, I think 3 days. Because when people passing him through the forest, if there's any passerbys, they'll get used to seeing him there, and then they'll feel like they can create conditions. They see him once, they see him the second time, they see him the third time. Oh, hey, what are you doing here, buddy? And the arhat now has conditions with this person, and what happens is, for the arhat, he feels, I could be just putting more and more time for my cultivation, and just be done with it. Why is this guy coming around bothering me?
And I guess for listeners that aren't familiar with the terminology, an arhat would sort of be the equivalent of a saint, more or less, I guess you would say.
Well, there's 4-stage arhats. And my memory really is terrible. I never put time on memorizing a lot of the stuff that I have researched or read or cultivate in terms of sutras and stuff. Whatever is very significant to me, I remember it to a T. So knowing the names of states, I don't really, the 4 states of Arhat. You could say that each state has its different vibrational level, different consciousness, or different way of just being. I mean, after a certain level, there's no returning. There's nothing else to be learned. It means all false thinking is cut off. The sight is gained, the hearing is gained, the knowledge is gained, because it's not that you sat there and had to read to know it. You tapped in, you realized that wisdom. So someone from another country comes to you and says something to you in their language, you're like, okay, yeah, how you doing? There's a way to communicate with them, you know? And yeah, you could say it's like that, a saint or whatever people can make an equivalency to, it can just be that way for you. So if someone says, oh, a Taoist immortal could be like an arhat. Probably, maybe, if that Taoist immortal has attained that kind of state too. You know, it's not fixed, but then the principles are fixed. But the mannerism, how it's applied, can be flexible.
Yeah, I guess in terms of a Taoist immortal, my understanding is that in some cases, some of the cultivation practices, you don't necessarily need virtue to become an immortal. Like in some of them, they would think that just by cultivating essence, they could achieve immortality, but, do it
That's so
without
funny.
virtue.
That's so funny you bring this up because my student asked me the same question last night. He says, is it true that there could be immortals who don't cultivate virtue? I said, but understand that immortals have a lifespan, just like gods do. It just seems that they don't die because they're living a long time. So they themselves feel they don't die. But when the reality hits them, they just sit there and go, oh crap. And the signs of decay start to show, and their forms start to change. And then all of a sudden, 10,000 years later, 10,000 years from they're born, the last few years or so, they start seeing decay. Something's happening to them. They're getting ready to be reborn, and you want to know why? Because they didn't nourish the field that nourishes they didn't nourish the field of nourishment for immortality. They used it up. Sorry, but you're not fully immortal unless you jumped off the cycle of birth and death. And if immortality actually means you jumped off the cycle of birth and death, you will actually have to perfect virtue.
Okay.
And a lot of people would say that there's the evil immortals and stuff like that, because immortality itself is, okay, you could say you can have 2 ways of immortality, or 3 ways of immortality, or 5 million ways of immortality. Some of the more popular common ones is that you cultivate Jing Qi Shen, and you go through these Qigong practices, external, internal cultivation, under the umbrella term Qigong, and you cultivate through there, and you be a total a-hole. Speak very bland on things like this, speak very straight up. There's no reason to be some, very proper and put on a face of properness, because most people aren't like that anyway. And truthfully speaking, if the person's a jerk off and they practice qigong and they meditate, it doesn't mean they're going to change their attitude and be better. It just means they only have the education that allows them to cultivate the mind to have some types of abilities and reach some types of states. It may or may not solidify or raise his vibration to a point where after he physically dies, he will have actually attained a specific level of yang qi to maintain a state of or a rebirth in immortality as an immortal. Who knows? Perhaps not. But even as an immortal, you still have to cultivate. You still would cultivate, but most of the time, not most of the time, but many times, you have immortals who just enjoy their lifespan. And then all of a sudden, boom, they turn back into some other thing. Who knows? So yeah, you don't need that virtue practice to get it, but it won't last anyway. But then there's the other pathway of using virtue and cultivating the mind, which is another form of Qigong, and Qigong itself is cultivating the mind. So really, Chan and what people consider to be Qigong is not separate from itself, because Chan has walking, standing, sitting, running, lying practices. Okay? We have posture work also. We have spontaneous movement work in the Chan as well, as long as you're applying that non-discriminative mind. And in Qigong, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, wow, I got a sensation in the palm of my hand. Wow, I'm getting this pressure point open. And, oh, I got this sensation on my third eye. Wow, you're just chasing clouds. You're not getting anywhere. You just can get temporary sensations. These are basic. It's like you just started the 20-mile journey to the doorway, So these are just preliminary feelings. You would need to realize, or one would need to realize that you can cultivate virtue, cultivate the mind, do your qigong, do whatever you want, but don't be disrespectful to people. Don't be. I was to say another word because it really just can cut right through all the fluffy talk and the new agey, happy, love, joy stuff. But really, don't be nasty to people. You be nice to people because that's nice. That promotes niceness. Like attracts like. Why are you going to want to attract more negative things around you? More things you assume are positive, but actually end up being a waste of your energy and a waste of your time.
Yeah, and people should keep in mind the book is called the Way of Virtue, right?
Duh. Right. You should have just said that first. Duh. The way of
All right,
virtue.
we should
So-
we should probably carry on to chapter 36.
yes, sir.
Okay. If one wishes to shrink it, one must first expand it. If one wishes to weaken it, one must first strengthen it. If one wishes to discard it, one must first promote it. If one wishes to seize it, one must first give it. This is called subtle clarity. The soft and the weak overcome the tough and the strong. Fish cannot leave the depths. The sharp instruments of the state cannot be shown to the people.
Ooh. Ooh. This is cool. Speaking on cultivation. It, okay, let's put like it in quotes. It means the mind, but not just the mind. Actually, the all-pervasive wisdom mind, of non-discrimination. Shrink, excuse me, means to apply single-minded concentration. This is like one's focus becoming very small, holding on to one thought, one idea. How to do that, but first apply an idea of cultivation. So in doing so, one investigates the principles of practice. But before that even, one has to be accepting of a new, quote unquote, new concept to undertake, understand, trust. This is called opening one's mind. Acceptance is opening one's mind. It is just using false thinking to fight false thinking. So it leads one to develop a single-minded concentration. Sometimes you can fight poison with poison, as long as you don't get attached to the method, because then the poison you did to fight the other poison becomes your new poison.
Well, I mean, this to me just smacks of Chan. You know what I mean? Using the mind to overcome the mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just amazing how Tao Te Ching is like, hey, and people are going, it's this, and others are going, okay, it is, but then it is that, and then it's more. It's just can be like you said before, it can be taken in so many different ways because the mind creates the Dharma, the mind creates the teachings, the mind creates the afflictions, thus you have the ways to end the afflictions. Yeah, it's just this whole commentary today just reminds me of my conversations with my student the last 2 days. Really fun stuff. It's just like hearing it over and over again. Here in the thing, weaken. It doesn't mean to be frail and or make something submissive, or along those lines. It means to return to a state of non-action, non-doing. So in order to do that, one must have strength and concentration. Strengthen the mind through concentration, and that which had a hold on the mind is no longer able. Discard means to detach, obviously, let go. But when a cultivator applies himself to let things go, it seems to become stronger. The thing they're trying to let go seems to have a even stronger grasp on them. I really like this section because it reminds me of what I learned when I was younger by my first teacher, my sister. This part is called resisting what persists. So in turn, like a method to let go is to persist what one resists. So the extreme occurs, right? It just requires concentration so that when the extreme does occur, one can recognize it and then let that go too. So usually when we resist what is persisting, what is around us, we're resisting that. What if we don't like it? We resist it. And it seems to just be around even more. So instead of trying to fight what's around so you add more power to the situation that you don't like, you take what is around and you let it just be the way it is. Persist what you resist. Leave what you don't like there. Leave it alone. You can't do anything about it. Leave it alone. And if for somehow, some way, it loses its momentum and it just goes away. And then that's it.
What do you make of the final two lines? Sharp instruments of the state cannot be shown to the people. I mean, that to me almost sounds out of place with the rest of the chapter.
Well, we could have a build up to this. Okay, let me see this here. The message. Let's see. The methods discussed prior to the last line refer to an expedient means of cultivation.
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay. It's like a gradual method. So the last sentence, they're using sharp as a metaphor for being direct. State means one in power, which is the inherent pure wisdom. So the last sentence means that the direct method may not be fit for everyone, so one must utilize expedient means to teach others how to cultivate. Direct methods may not be accepted. So, if you're too direct on someone, it may shock someone, confuse them. It
Ah.
cannot be
Okay.
accepted.
Okay. So
Uh,
that's almost like, for instance, if you go smack someone on the head with the chain stick, who's not ready to be, who's not in a state to receive it, it's probably not the best approach. I guess would be one
Probably.
one way to read it.
Yeah. Well, we look at this whole portion. I mean, let's look at the word discard here. I mean, we're talking about letting go, right? Resisting what persists and persist what you resist here. So that's just an expedient means. That's just a method to let it go. But if the person got a method and said, okay, apply your mind to this and be with that, and they were able to actually just do that, then there would be no reason to have to discard anything. They already were able to apply themselves to the direct method of, here you go. This is the principle. Boom. Oh my God, he got it. Why? Because over many, many years, probably lifetimes, he had developed the application of mind so much so over a gradually long period of time that at sudden point, he heard the principle and got awakened. So the sudden method and the gradual method. And they're both intertwined
Hmm.
because both of them go through their own process. People usually end up saying, excuse me, people end up saying, oh, this person got psychic abilities because he did this method. But if he did actually have psychic abilities because he practiced this method and all of a sudden his psychic abilities started to manifest, it's really not that if you practice this method, you will have that thing too. This person had already practiced for a long, 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 long time, and all of a sudden, one thing tipped the scale, and boom, he got it. But it was all gradual practice. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to practice Qigong, and in 5 years, I'm going to be this great healer. Or, in 2 years, I'm going to be this great Qigong master. There's no such thing as a master anyway, but they think they'll be ultimately greatly proficient in just a short period of time. And no, these people who are proficient, one in this lifetime already did maybe 20, 30, or 40 years of practice. But then the past lifetimes, in several lifetimes, they have been practicing this too. Maybe not that method, but cultivation in general. So it adds up over time.
That might explain, some of these people incarnating as sort of natural healers or natural, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get too deep into it, so maybe we can go on to chapter 37.
37. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The Tao is constant in non-action, yet there is nothing it does not do. If the sovereign can hold on to this, all things shall transform themselves. Transformed yet wishing to achieve, I shall restrain them with the simplicity of the nameless. The simplicity of the nameless, they shall be without desire. Without desire, using stillness, the world shall steady itself. I have a funny feeling I know where you're going to go with this one, but
Ooh, interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go on this one, and then you tell me if it was that. Okay,
okay.
let's see. When one does nothing, they are still doing something. They just don't discriminate on what you're doing, or anything else for that matter. And then it's as though things are just as they are, moving along or not, on their own or smoothly or whatever. A sovereign means that which is a non-moving state, neither coming or going. And so that's the application of a non-discriminating mind, right? Restraining would mean that the desires are subdued with single-minded concentration upon that which neither comes nor goes, which is our thus nature, our wisdom nature, And the rest of it speaks of no desire and the world being at rest. This means that the mind of the cultivator being at rest. The world itself is neither at rest nor not at rest. So there is nothing to think of the world being something as at all. And people assume the way they think is just the way the world actually is, but in truth, it's not. the world is according to the one perceiving it to be that way. What is the world without your views of it? And we spoke about this even earlier on in this year with our recordings. What is the world without your views? What is that? And we get to try to find what that actually is. Was this somewhere around what you would think I was going to say? I don't know.
Yeah, more or less. I just thought it kind of cut to the nature of the non-discriminating mind.
Yeah, but it is a commentary, so I have to give a little bit more in there.
Could have flowered up a bit, huh?
Yeah, you know. I can't just say. It means just cut right through the non-discriminating mind. Okay, chapter 38.
Chapter 38 also means the non-discriminating mind. Chapter 39.
Oh, wait, let's just sum up the rest of the commentary up to chapter 81. Just the non-discriminating mind. Peace. Peace out.
And thus concludes my commentary on the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, it's great. Well, yeah, that concludes the 37th chapter's commentary.
All right, you want me to keep going?
Surely.
Okay. Chapter 38. High virtue is not virtuous, therefore it has virtue. Low virtue never loses virtue, therefore it has no virtue. High virtue takes no contrived action and acts without agenda. Low virtue takes contrived action and acts with agenda. High benevolence takes contrived action and acts without agenda. High righteousness takes contrived action and acts with agenda. High etiquette takes contrived action and upon encountering no response, use arms to pull others. Therefore the Tao is lost, and then virtue is lost, and then benevolence is lost, and then righteousness is lost, and then etiquette. Those who have etiquette are a thin shell of loyalty and sincerity, in the beginning of chaos. Those with foreknowledge are the flowers of the Tao, in the beginning of ignorance. Therefore the great person abides in substance and does not dwell in the thin shell, abides in the real and does not dwell in the flower. Thus they discard that and take this. That's a rather long-winded one, but...
Yeah, you know, I would pay anyone $50 to read the first part of this thing extremely fast. 20 times. Without making a mistake. I'm kidding. Hey, is the word etiquette French?
Yeah, I would assume it has French or Latin roots.
Oh. Cool. Okay, you know, just that's the end of this commentary.
I think etiquette would just be like a social propriety or something of that nature.
Cool. Well, people may read this one, and I like this one too. They may read this one and assume that Lao Tzu is saying not to cultivate virtue, honesty, righteousness, loyalty, you know, everything that we've seen in the first part, tongue twister phrases. Actually, he's saying quite the opposite. He says, let's see, towards the end, that those who have etiquette, you know, beginning of chaos, this means that the person is not true in heart. They climb on conditions. When they don't get what they want, their true intentions shine in their greed and anger. Foreknowledge means knowledge that is without its relative, ignorance. It means those with wisdom do not have to make themselves be righteous, humble, etc. They already are that way because the inherent wisdom manifests or acts out through patience, compassion, and wisdom, all on its own, without preparation. It's just that way. So in order to get to that point, one must have practice application of single-minded focus, which in turn they have already been practicing proper conduct, yet understand why restraining the mind from flippant emotional behavior is important.
In one word, I think what this goes to would be superficial virtue versus authentic virtue. The superficial versus the authentic.
Good, cool. Yeah, and you know, like we talk about a concentration power, you know, in order to attain concentration power, the desires are lessened. In order to do that, the not discriminating upon the senses and desires are applied. So it's like in order to attain concentration power, the desires are lessened. Okay, in order to make the desires lessened, you know, you have to be non-discriminate upon these senses, and then the desires, you know, and whatnot can slowly goodbye, So then the true appearance of conduct and virtue and the like, can manifest. So Lao Tzu's not saying, to hell with all this happiness and how are you doing? Go F yourself. He's not saying that. He's saying you got to be real true about it. You can't just sit there and climb on conditions and try to take things from people or make yourself look better or, just be not a nice person. Because, it's nice
You
to
don't
be.
you don't want to act right or act virtuous just so people look at you and think you're a good person, right? Like if you're acting with ulterior motives, then it's not really virtue.
Oh, exactly. And even, for this, I do the commentary and people hear the way I speak. And in actual real life, I mean, right now this is radio life, and in actual every day, if I'm not speaking on these, texts, or if I'm not talking about cultivation, I actually don't speak like this. I have a more calm demeanor. But when I speak about this stuff, I just feeling comes on, and it's literally very lackluster. So it's quite the opposite. Most people want to be in their proper state on when they're speaking about something to people. Oh, let's talk very calmly and this and that and all this flower happy stuff and try to be very serious about this. It's a serious matter and I have to be very serious about it and no, because we have enough of that and still there hasn't been any great information out there, even with people acting that part. I don't know if this is going to be great information to people. I hope it would have some type of good influence on people's minds and give them another direction of, another viewpoint on the angle to look at it. But it's lack. I don't throw luster. I lack luster in talking about it because there's so much fluffiness. So, outside of talking about it, I'm just very, hey, I actually don't talk much at all during the day.
Yeah, I'm much the same way myself.
So, anywho, let's move on. 39.
Okay. One sec. And I should mention the fellow who did this translation of the Tao Te Ching, Derek Lin. He's got chapters 38 through 81 divided up sort of like into another chunk. He labels it the Virtue Classic, so he would see these chapters as dealing primarily with virtue as opposed to the earlier chapters, although, it's all interrelated and virtue is sort of in all of it, but these ones deal more specifically with virtue, I guess, would be his read. Okay, chapter 39. Those that attained oneness since ancient times. The sky attained oneness and thus clarity. The earth attained oneness and thus tranquility. The gods attained oneness and thus divinity. The valley attained oneness and thus abundance. The myriad things attained oneness and thus life. The rulers attained oneness and became the standard for the world. These all emerged from oneness. The sky lacking clarity would break apart. The earth lacking tranquility would erupt. The gods lacking divinity would vanish. The valley lacking abundance would wither. Myriad things lacking life would be extinct. The rulers lacking standard would be toppled. Therefore the honored uses the lowly as a basis. The higher uses the lower as a foundation. Thus the rulers call themselves alone, bereft and unworthy. Is this not using the lowly as a basis? Is it not so? Therefore the ultimate honor is no honor. Do not wish to be skinny like jade. Do not wish to be shiny like jade. Be dull like rocks.
I have some skinny jade.
I knew a girl named Jade who was skinny. Maybe that Freudian slip.
Well, you are reading a lot, and a lot of this is like tongue twister, so,
Yeah. I hope people can forgive me.
Yeah. No. Okay. So, wow. Let's see. Should I put on the flowery, this is serious, but I'm a very calm person voice? Everything comes from the mind alone. This first section refers to...
You're so new agey. I can't take it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm wearing some really weird colored clothes. So, everything does come from the mind alone. The first section refers to the energy system of the body. Crown center being the sky, consciousness, the idea of a self and a time span, thus attachment. The valley refers to the channels which carry the raw essence to the whole body, and thus it brings to life all functions and activities within the body. That ruler refers to the application of the mind. Who is thinking? Quote unquote, who is thinking? Who is meditating? Who is ruling? That kind of mind. The mind of investigation, having concentration power to keep all under heaven, all of one's mind at ease. But because all of this comes from the mind alone, it is subject to its relative opposite. Thus, the next section of opposing outcomes. If ignorance, attachment, greed, anger, desire are in the ruling seat, then all is lost, basically. It's like here you had the safety on, well, I'm not going to say because there's too many problems with gun control anyway. But here you were in the fields cutting stalks of corn. You had your reaper over there, and you're reaping very controlling, and then all of a sudden you're like, no one's around, I'm just gonna have fun, and you're going la 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 la, swinging around, and you lost your control, and all of a sudden the reaper's flying all the way down the valley, and he kills your cow. It's like spinning around the field, and boom, your cow gets hit, and damn, if I would just had a little bit more control, I wasn't being like an ignorant fool just going la 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 all over the place with this big friggin' thing in my hands, maybe my cow would still be alive. All is lost when these things take control. Greed, anger, ignorance, desire. Man, it's like putting, no offense to 5-year-olds who could drive, but putting a 5-year-old in the driver's seat.
They're totally off topic, but there is a video of something like a 9-year-old girl driving her dad to the liquor store or something because he was he was too drunk to drive himself, and she got pulled over. Anyway,
oh, that's funny. And what did he say? Oh, she's my designated driver.
More or less, yeah. Anyway, it just
God,
reminded me,
that's
totally
hilarious.
off topic, but
It's hilarious. Let's go on here. Honored, okay? He talks about honored. Honored means in full virtue, having the demeanor to be of high standard, thus sagely, of high wisdom. So when we say high standard, meaning being wise, being with that non-discriminative wisdom. You're not sitting there going, I, and I demand this, or I should have this. You're sitting there going, who? It should be the symbol of all Buddhist schools, the big owl. They go, who? It's perfect for Chan schools. Like, my back hurts. Who? Oh my God, that's right. So the honored, the sagely, they cultivate humility, the non-doing, the non-greedy for attention, in matters of cultivation. They are still and cultivate their breath. They feel like that they're nourished, and they nourish the seeds of proper empowerment. In doing such, as a sage, they do not seek for more. They don't seek for attention. They don't seek to be famous. So the message here is not to wear your accomplishments on your shoulder. Don't put it on your forehead. Don't stand out amongst the rest. Don't cause a big scene. Your ego is like loving that. I want to have the best. I want to have the best. So you don't want to develop further views of separation. You don't want to lose your divine stance, quote unquote. You don't want to lose your wisdom. You don't want to cut off the roots of that Bodhi, that wisdom.
Yeah, I guess just be humble, right?
Just be humble, really. I mean, the other day I went out to teach in the local gym, teach some martial arts, and one of the students, he says to me, teacher, you don't look like you do in this picture. I was like, this picture was a few years ago. This picture was, just a few months ago before we did the advertisement. And in my picture, I was wearing my long robes, what I've been wearing since, I don't know, like 17, 18 or so. And it's like, well, why aren't you wearing these clothes? Like, it brings too much attention now. I mean, before it wasn't too much. But I'm now in one place for a long time. I'm like, I'm in this city. It's a small city. It's very obvious. I walk around, I'm wearing these clothes. People, would assume that I practice, or would assume I'm a Buddhist, or would assume I'm a Taoist, or would assume I'm something. And it brings too much attention, unwanted attention that way. So I just throw on a pair of shorts now, a t-shirt and jeans. Who needs the attention? I mean, I'm nothing special because I can do these things. It's no big deal. But it just brings people to look and go, hey, who are you? What do you do? Sorry, I don't do anything. Then it just becomes more conversation, needless conversation, day in and day out of the same exact questions. You know? I mean, I'm nothing special, so I don't want to stand out anymore. I didn't want to stand out before, but now it's very obvious that I am standing out because now people are like, hey, you know? And in America, nobody cared. I walk in the corner store and they're like, hey, how you doing? You know, they didn't even look at what I was wearing. They didn't even know I was wearing clothes. You know? So when in Rome, do as the Romans, you know, and since this is China, you do as your society shows because, you know, you do it in the right way according to principle and virtue and things turn out okay.
Dijiao.
Didiao.
Dijiao. Okay.
Didiao. Yeah, Didiao. That's so cool. How'd you get that?
Oh, you told me that a long time ago, a couple of years ago.
Right. Didiao is, you know, stay on the down low.
On the down low.
Yeah. Keep it on the down low.
Shall we continue? This one's a really long chapter, so I have to prepare our viewers to be patient while I get through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I'll start now.
I'll go to the bathroom. By the time I come back, you're done. Go ahead.
All right. Ready? The returning is the movement of the Tao. The weak is the utilization of the Tao. The myriad things of the world are born of being. Being is born of non-being. 4 sentences. That's it.
Oh, man, I just got out of my seat, too. Okay, so there's 4 sentences. People think, well, this should be really short. Returning means to turn the light inwards. This is the expression of Tao, you know? To not be moved, to not have any attachment which causes more clouds to form in the mind. This is a yang expression, to move. Excuse me. Inwards is a yin expression. So thus weak means inwards, returning the light inwards instead of wasting your energy and letting your senses to steal your jewels. Born of being means because of the consciousness, thinking mind. I'm sorry, the conscious thinking mind. Too much coffee. Actually, 1 cup is like enough to keep me awake forever. So being born means because of the conscious thinking mind, because of a thought. Oh, I'm sorry, born of being. The coffee's really influencing my sight here.
Being is born of non-being.
And born of being is being of the born, right? Let me get my thoughts together here. Born of being means, what I say, because of the conscious thinking mind, right? Because of a thought. Myriad things are manifest. Because of a thought, myriad things are manifest. Because of the conscious thinking mind, myriad things are manifest. The thought, the idea of an I, comes from its opposite of no I. Thus, understanding that if you bring the light inwards and illuminate the senses, realization of the way can be realized. And thus the realization of things manifest from thoughts, from the mind, becomes apparent. Why would one want to be attached to the impermanent and the permanent at that point? I mean, if you're seeing this as it is, why would you want to stick around saying, this is this or that is that? You know, it's permanent and impermanent arguing over here. Fun
That's
stuff.
it? That's all?
Dude.
It sounds like there's glasses clinking in the background. It almost sounds like you're in a bar at certain points.
Actually, I am in I am in a local bar sitting in the back.
With a 40-ounce or a Jack.
With a with a bottle of Jägermeister here.
Philosophizing.
Philosophizing.
I sound like a French existential philosopher. Anyhow, I guess that's that for the Tao Te Ching chapters 31.
Oh, we're not going on? It was 31 through 40? I thought we were going 31 to 81. Sorry. You know what? I'm going to give a quick commentary on emptiness. You ready?
Ready. That was beautiful.
Oh, I'm glad you got it. Isn't that wonderful?
Can't fool me that easy.
Oh, right. Okay, great.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, I want to thank you again for joining us, Len.
Fun.
And to our viewers, please join us next week as we discuss beginning Buddhism. And to quote the final chapter of the Tao Te Ching, the sage does not accumulate. The more he assists others, the more he possesses. The more he gives to others, the more he gains. So thanks again.
Guni Google.
All right.
Sorry, I had to throw it in there. Wonderful Tao Te Ching commentary, everyone. Have a good night. Kidding.
All right, that's a wrap.